There we go. We are live now.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today on this here live stream. Today I am chatting with Rainer. He is
Hello.
half of the brain team behind the Less Than Secret, a cryptid comic anthology. One of these days, I will get the pronunciation of this title right, and by the time I get it right, it will be the end of the Kickstarter.
Ha! Yep, same. I just call it Less Than Secret.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to call it Less Than Secret because the subtitle is pretty evident on the Kickstarter page.
No one calls it Hobbit: A Journey There and Back Again or whatever that is.
True. Oh, sorry. I just saw on Discord because I had posted on Discord on my Tiny Dinos Discord server. Yes, I have my own Discord server for super fans of mine. Some questions if anybody had any questions for you. So I'm going to keep that open in a separate tab if anybody has any questions for Rainer. You can ask here on YouTube, or you can go to the Tiny Dinos Discord if you have the link. Winky, winky, wonk, wonk. Hello, Ben. Thank you for joining us in the chat today. It's only a matter of time before Jessica potentially joins us too.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So, first of all, how are you doing, my dude?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I am phenomenal. I took a look at the Kickstarter page for Less Than Secret, and I saw that we are so close to the $3,000 mark.
So close. It's like tantalizing. I keep checking. It's insane.
Yeah.
I did not think we were going to get to that till like the last week, even if we did. This Hill Kickstarter has gone so much. It's the fans. Anyone watching? It's all up to you, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's the fans. We've got peeps who have really supportive peeps on their side, and also who doesn't love cryptids?
Yes, this is very true.
I mean, really, that's half the fun. Ben's been posting comments. Technically, the subtitle is just a cryptid anthology, but we've been using a cryptid comic anthology in all the branding. That's true. I will be watching the Kickstarter for you guys, so you don't have to keep hitting refresh. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, just post updates in the comments as we keep going.
Yes.
Oh, and we are also joined by Tuna.
Yes, he's going to be coming in and out. He'll be on my lap the whole time, but he'll raise and lower his head. So he's, fuzzy photos of cryptid.
Fuzzy photos of cryptids. He is our cryptid mascot for this anthology.
There he goes.
And him and Luna.
Yes. Two cats with rhyming names.
It is so serendipitous. I love it.
It is.
All right. So I wanted to ask you about some of the other comic projects that you have done before Less Than Secret, because I don't know very much about your comic history or bibliography, as it were. So
sure.
Yeah, let's start at the beginning.
All right, well, let's start at the beginning. I guess a good beginning to start is that I went to the Center for Cartoon Studies, which is where I did most of my comics work. And actually, this leads into the comic I made today is early CCS things, so that'll be quite interesting. Because I desperately knew that I wanted to make comics, but I had only made like 14 pages of comics total at that point, so it wasn't very much. And I kept telling everyone my first year at CCS that I was going to make horror comics. I was going to be a horror cartoonist.
Yeah.
And I did not make a single horror comic. I made mostly like comedy. My main brand is like classic movie monsters, but they're funny on purpose this time. So I went through that. My thesis was a bunch of mini comics you can buy if you see me at a show.
When shows resume.
Yes, when shows resume. My main big comic project that I've done is called Bog Beast, and it is a slapstick pastiche of movies like The Beast from the Black Lagoon.
Okay.
Very funny story. It was supposed to be a YA comic about a 12-page YA comic about a teenage bog beast. And then I started on the wrong character, and then it wound up being like 80 pages and about the 2 side characters that were only supposed to be in the first 5 pages. So that's my creative process.
You just start with you start with an idea, and then suddenly a side character will step in and be like, "I'm the main character now," and then you just kind of roll with it.
Yep, it's to the point where I never really named them. I think they're named Jeff and Joe in the comic, and I can never remember which one's which.
Oh dear.
So yeah, but I've done a couple comics like that. I did a comic called Megabytes about vampires. A vampire who's trying to figure out how to use smartphones because he thinks that's the key to becoming a true master of darkness.
Nice.
The Life of Dead is one of my favorites, which will be on my website when I get it up after this live stream. Which is about a ghost who's been dead for over 1,000 years, who's invited to a party and seems to be convinced that he needs to bring beer since it says bring your own beer on the party invite, even though he doesn't have hands.
Oh.
And that's what I've been doing. I have a couple other things burning the fire, but yeah. Those are my main themes. My current comic that is for the one that's in this Kickstarter, Demons in Dover, was inspired by me realizing I had never actually done a horror comic before, even though I had done many things that were adjacent to horror.
Yeah. So like, yeah. Horror adjacent, but not horror-ish. But this was your chance to finally flex your horror muscles like you've been wanting to since your CCS days.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what inspired the short story about the Dover demon? Was it just that you wanted to do a horror story, or was it something else?
Well, it was mostly inspired by I wanted to do a horror story at first. I was at first thinking of doing the, oh my god, what are they called? Baskerville Goblins, I believe. But then I learned that they're these small goblin-y things, but then I realized that those are not really considered cryptids, they're more considered aliens. So I just went to search for cryptids until I found one that looked uncomfortable enough that I didn't want to draw it. And then I found the Dover Demon, and I was like, it's sold. The comic was actually inspired by, there's a couple of actual illustrations of the Dover Demon by people who saw it. And in all of them, it had these such weird hands? That made me, like little tentacly hand things. It's very odd. In every picture, it's gripping a rock or a tree. And this is a weird connection, but I had a flashback to, I have some breathing problems. And about 2 years ago, I had this horrible night where I spent the entire night not being able to sleep because my throat was feeling constricted. So every time I was almost asleep, I was like, and I was doing this death rattle. It was terrible. But it was the sense of dread that night where I was like, am I ever actually going to fall asleep? Am I going to die? Just that dread was what I wanted to communicate in the comic. And the hands, the crushingness of the hands reminded me of that night. So I was like, hey, I'll make a comic that's vaguely about that.
Heck yeah. It's very evocative. Also very evocative imagery.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so I can see where your horror tendencies come from.
Yes.
I know that you haven't done a whole lot of horror stories. You tend to do horror adjacent stuff. But do you do something similar to that whenever you make stories? Do you pull from your own personal experiences to write those?
Yes, I always do. Most of my comics are about some sort of misunderstanding or emotion I felt. Like, I don't like to do autobio. I hate drawing myself. And I'm just like, I have a feeling that I won't be able to retell the events accurately. So I'm just like, I didn't know. For example, I made a comic called Megabytes, which is about a vampire. And that's because throughout high school, I was the guy who, I had a phone, but I left it at home all day.
Yeah.
Like, shocking. A Gen Z person who doesn't constantly go on their phone, and I had to learn what a phone was, and like my peers were like, get a Twitter, and then I got a Twitter, but I didn't know how to use Twitter, so it just sat. I think I tweeted once, and then only once I went to CCS where I was like, oh hey, Twitter, and I started using it actively.
Yeah.
So that was just about that frustration and confusion, and then Life of Dead was about, I don't know how parties works because I went to a tiny ass school with no parties. And then when I became an adult and there were parties, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
and all my
fair.
comics are like that. Bog Beast was just about how obsessive I can be in general.
Mm-hmm.
When I get attached to a goal, I can get very focused in a not so healthy way sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's where the bad guy of that comic came from.
Gotcha.
I like to call most of my comics thinly veiled autobio that has nothing to do with me, really.
I mean, that's a fairly good assessment. Sometimes I feel the same way about some of the comics that I make, but like you really have to squint to see the autobio in my stories because most of them are like so fantastical.
Yeah.
But I do get the appeal of pulling from real life experiences. Like there was a short like story that I made for Validation back in the day, and I actually based it on my first ever experience going to my first ever comic shop, and people didn't know how to take it because they were like, this doesn't happen in real life. And I'm like, I can assure you that it does. Because this happened to me.
The worst. That's just the worst. Oh, yeah. I realized I forgot 2 of my other comic projects.
Yes.
Which was another anthology I am regularly submit to called Hat. Ben just made a very good comment of mostly CCS Party mostly involves making jam comics. Accurate.
That is accurate, yes.
I've been in the first 2 volumes of an anthology called Fantology, which I quite enjoy, and I made 2 comics in there. The second one was about my direct-mindedness again. The first one is a very embarrassing origin that I regret.
Oh boy.
The comic's good, but
okay.
My roommate showed me. I grew up very unreligious, and I didn't actually know the basics of Christianity. And I watched some musical, Godspell. And I was like, oh, what if this could make such a good D&D or bad guy origin story? And then I was like, what if I frame Godspell as a bad thing? And then I'm like, oh, right, this is an actual religion. I regret this. I regret this. Comic's good. I don't think you can tell too much, but that was the idea behind it. Right. It was like, oh, yeah, religions are real. Whoops.
Yeah.
But by Fantology, the comic's good. You can't tell.
I feel like I've heard of Fantology before. Did it ever make it to comic shops?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay, because like there was a comic shop that I worked for a while. They were actually super indie friendly. Like they didn't just carry stuff from the Diamond distributors. Like thank goodness for that. Yeah, like they had indie stuff. They even carried some of my books on their shelves, which was really nice of them to do.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so they also carried, because they had this like wall of graphic novels. They would carry like small press and indie graphic novels and anthologies on their shelves, which was really, really cool. So I almost wonder if Fantology made it on the shelves at some point, and then I just kind of like, I saw it and I went, oh, that looks neat, and then I just continued because I was working that day. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. Those people run that very well. It was an inspiration for running this anthology, which was a lot of fun.
So this is not your first anthology project then?
No, this is the first one I'm running with Ben. Thank you very much.
Yes.
CCS has you make an anthology together, and I've been involved in Fantology, and 1 or 2 anthologies that didn't really get off the ground. I've made comics for.
Yeah, that happens. I've seen a handful of those where like they'll have a call for submissions, you submit something, and then you just don't really hear from them after that.
It happens. People have lives. That's
fair. That's fair. So that when I heard about this project, I was really surprised at 1, how well organized everybody is, and 2, that we had set deadlines and pretty much everybody was okay with meeting those.
Yes, it was quite good. It was a very good test. Maybe I could go into where this anthology started and how
go for it.
We managed to organize it. It was the funniest story. I won't go into it too much, but I had made a business plan for a series of anthologies, let's just say, last year, and I had done all the math, and I just could not figure out a way to make it work financially. And I was just like, I guess this isn't going to happen. But I was really excited with the business plan. Ben, out of the blue, messaged me like a year later being like, hey, has anyone done anything like this? And it's like, I made an entire business plan on how to do that. And then in 5 seconds, he had been like, couldn't you reduce the cost to like a 12th by doing this? And I was like, yes, you could. He's like, also, Kickstarter exists. I'm like, right, Kickstarter exists.
Yep.
Forgot about Kickstarter.
See, this is why we are mutual friends with Ben, because Ben is the outside voice to step in and be like, hey, by the way, this is an option too.
Yes. Thank you, Ben, very much.
Yes.
That was... And he's been great to work with. Just amazing. He knows how Kickstarter works, which has been amazing. I don't.
Yep. By the way, he is going to be the guest for Saturday's live stream. Ooh. So, yeah. Same time slot, 1 p.m. Eastern Data Time. I guess that's what D stands for. I'm so used to saying EST.
Yeah.
I don't know. But you're
I don't know how time zones work.
You're over on the West Coast, though.
Yes, I moved to Portland.
Yes.
Yes, quite a nice area. I moved slightly too close to Comfort for everything to shut down. I was there for a while, but it was that stage of you starting to get into a rhythm, and then block.
Yeah, I'm only just beginning to pick up a rhythm because I moved to the Toledo area while everything was happening last year.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so yes. I moved in June. A lot of circumstances made me move in June.
Right.
So there were things outside of my control, including the fact that the house that I was renting at the time was being bought by somebody else, so I had to move.
Yeah, I'll do it.
It's a long story, but... yeah, I moved up to the Toledo area in June while everything was going on, and I'm only just now beginning to get into a rhythm now that everything is like opening back up. Because for a while it was just like, oh, you want to have a game night over at the rec center? Well, you can't because it's closed. Oh, you want to go to this comic shop? Well, you can't because it's closed. You want to go to this coffee shop? You can't because it's closed.
I feel that so much.
Yeah.
One of the first things I did when I started moving to Portland to get involved with everyone here was I started going to a game night at a local game store.
Ooh, yeah.
The Portland game store, great store. And we were running through the D&D adventure Descent into Avernus.
Ooh.
They closed down the store the session before the final boss fight.
Oh, no!
It was terrible timing.
Oh, that is terrible timing. Oh, my geez. I am so sorry, dude.
It's all right. We had planned for like 3 sessions after the boss fight to just wrap things up, but we didn't even get...
You didn't even get to the boss fight!
Sorry, we'll never go unfought. Or never be defeated. We'll never know.
Hey, you don't know.
You don't know. That's true.
Yeah, you don't know about these things. Like, it could be that eventually we'll get to a point where we can do in-person gaming again, and you can finally have your big bad endgame boss fight. Who knows?
That would be very rad.
So what level were your players at by the time they were getting ready to gear up for that?
Oh, God. I think we were level 12.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, which was the highest I'd ever been at the time. Most D&D. That's the other thing I do, by the way. I play too much D&D, and by too much, I mean not enough.
I mean, that's the universal agreement. You play too much and not enough.
Yep.
D&D. Yeah.
Yep. I've been planning some projects around that actually lately. Which was
around playing D&D?
Making D&D.
Ooh. Okay.
Which was I have some things on percolating, been working on them, to make some D&D adventures that I'm going to plan to put up on the Drive-Thru RPG.
Ooh, there you go. Oh, have you been involved with tabletop role-playing Twitter at all?
Not particularly. I follow a couple people, but...
Okay. I will say this, because I was on Twitter from like 2013 until 2017, and then I left because of a lot of factors on Twitter, including that it was right after the 2016 elections. So, the other was comics Twitter is a very insular island, and it's not a very fun island to be on. Yeah. Just going to throw that out there. But I got back on Twitter maybe last month, and I mostly went back on Twitter just to tweet about D&D and Dragon Ball Fighters and, stuff that I like. It's a fun account. It's not necessarily a business one. But the tabletop community on Twitter is probably the nicest community I've come across on social media, which
lovely.
It's lovely, but it's also weird.
I have to get involved with that.
Heck yeah, definitely do. Because for one thing, it's hugely diverse. Like, there are streamers on there who are like of the AAPI community. There's gamers, GAY-mers. There's so many different perspectives in the community, and all of them just treat each other with such dude, I'm really excited for you. Oh my gosh, check out this thing that my friend is doing. Or recently there's been some people who have fallen on hard times, and so other people are like, hey, contribute to this person's, go buy their stuff on Drive-Thru RPG to help them make rent, stuff like that.
That's fantastic.
It's wonderful. Yeah. It's one of those rare communities that came across that's actually really nice, and it's weird.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Hey, Ben posted a comment, which is if you look at our Kickstarter, you can get one of the preview images is that of I can do commissions for you, and I'm totally willing to do D&D commissions if you want that, because
there you go.
The concept art there is my D&D character. Hello.
Yes. Yeah, if you go to the Kickstarter page, there are samples of commissions towards the bottom of the page, I think.
Yes.
Because we do have commissions available for folks who back at the higher levels for the Kickstarter. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And Rainer is offering one of those, and he can draw your D&D character for you if you are interested. Oh, hello there. Nice to see you.
Hello. Yes.
Yeah. So, I'm also offering them, but more in the cryptid vein. But if you wanted to get your D&D character drawn, hit up Rainer. He's good for that.
I am.
Yeah. Don't worry about that comment. Yep. No, we are not.
Yep. So but back on the comics thing, I just need to say this has been a fabulous project to work on, and everyone's been so great in helping each other out. It is really cool.
I know, right? I will say I don't do collaborative comics projects very often, but this is one of the ones that makes me go, oh man, I want to work with this crew again.
Well, you might have an opportunity to.
Oh my!
Because part of this Kickstarter is that if we raise enough money, which we are, yes.
Yes, we've met our initial goal. We're working towards stretch goals. Please help us hit the stretch goals.
Yes, which is we're planning on running another anthology very soon, where not very soon, another anthology once this is done, we will be using any extra funds for this that are not used paying towards our contributors. Most of it's going towards paying our contributors. Yes. Any extra funds will go as a nest egg to see if we can. The goal is paying everyone before the Kickstarter. That would be amazing.
Yep. So just to make sure that we get the wording right. So with this Kickstarter, we're raising funds to pay the contributors, and any extra gets put back into a nest egg for the next campaign. That nest egg is what will be used to pay the contributors before the next campaign launches.
Yes, and then just like this one, the Kickstarter will continue to pay the contributors more as it goes up in funds.
Yes. Heck yeah. I am all for this. if you're all for this too, check out the Kickstarter campaign. We got the QR code up in the upper right, and we also have a link. I will get that on the screen. We have a link to the campaign at tinyurl.com/less-than-secrets. There's also a link in the doobly-doo on YouTube.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna take care of a thing.
That's all good.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, back to Kickstarter Comics Anthologies and things like that. So this is the first one that you're organizing.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Do you? Oh, hold on. Comments. Do you know Carrie Minotti? Ben or Rainer?
That name's familiar. Can't remember in what context though.
Yeah. But if they're a comic person, like I'm okay. The thing about comics and working in the comics field, I don't want to use industry because so many people are in comics as a hobby. But the thing about working in the comics field is that when you get the most famous, the most recognition you'll get is, I think I've heard your name before, and that's the highest achievement that you can unlock.
Yeah, wait, that's right. That's a YouTuber. I think I have a friend who's a fan of them. Yeah. But yeah, there are a lot of comics people I do not know, and I don't know that many YouTubers.
Yeah, I know more YouTubers than I know comic artists, but a lot of the comic artists that I do know are like you and the folks in the anthology and a few other people whom I have collaborated with in the past.
Yep.
And then whatever comics that I read that I'm like, ooh, I really like how this story turned out, I'll like check them out for further stories. But yeah, do you like gaming? We were talking about Dungeons and Dragons earlier, so yes.
Yes, very much so. And video games too. I just started playing League of Legends again. I should not have just started playing League of Legends again.
Oh no.
That game is a time sink. But yeah, we are looking forward to doing this again. Let's see, what else is there to talk about? Oh, I could talk about the process I did for the comic.
Yes, let's talk about your comic about the Dover Demon, because for one thing, I have no idea what the Dover Demon even is.
It is a very strange cryptid. The main thing is that from what I can tell, it's only been spotted a couple times and mostly in a small time frame. Which means it's not, I don't think for the most part people go there and search for it. Well, if they do, but not like expecting to find it. Okay.
So like what area has it been spotted in? Because I know Angela did a cryptid that's based in Germany, but most of us I think did like US centric ones.
Yes, this one was found entirely in Dover, I want to say Massachusetts.
Okay.
Yes, Dover, Massachusetts.
Okay.
It was a very strange cryptid is actually why I really liked it. Because the stories are of it being spotted and chased and running away is the main story that people see, is that this teenager who is not, there are nothing in our comic is representative of anybody in real life. Just want to clarify, I'm not saying it is not supposed to be a resemblance. It's just an interesting story.
Yeah.
But this teenager...
Any resemblance to real people or events are completely coincidental.
Yes. But this teenager spotted this creature and decided to start chasing it. And it managed to run up to him. And then at the end, when he finally got exhausted, he looked up and it was just standing next to a tree, staring at him. And like, that's such a weird thing to do, to run away, then turn around and stare.
Yeah.
Why would it do that?
It's just the Dover Demon.
Yeah, it's not like Bigfoot. It doesn't seem like an animal in some ways, was why I liked it. I did research, by the way. Most people think it's actually a baby moose.
I mean, it's got like a vaguely moose-like head, I guess.
Yeah. No, it matches the description of a baby moose quite a bit. So I decided to... I like things that are a bit overly human looking. Like
if you squint, it could be a human.
Yeah, but in an uncomfortable way.
Yeah.
That's how I like my monsters. It's like, that isn't the part that should be human.
Oh, my buddy Carlos was like, Teen Moose coming soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to get into the idea of, you don't know what this thing is.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a moose? In real life, yes. In my story, no.
Yeah. But still, though, like, it's interesting. I feel like a lot of cryptids are some kind of natural phenomenon, whether it's an animal or like gas, but
Yeah.
It's viewed at in just the right lens that it could be vaguely person-like.
Yes. With the manner of the comic, I actually did this in a pattern that I really enjoyed, which was I hard shaded the protagonist, but soft shaded the backgrounds and the Dover Demon, because I wanted to get the sense that it wasn't the same thing as the protagonist.
Okay. Yeah.
That was the technique I wanted to go. Is it kind of fades into the background? I mean, it's the whitest thing on the page at every single point, so it always pops up. Yes.
Yeah.
It's the palest thing because I want it to almost glow in the night. But I just used this comic was done on Procreate, fantastic app. My iPad just bricked, so any future comics will be done in Photoshop. But recommend Procreate if you have an iPad.
Yeah.
And the strategy there was I used I grayscale painted with just some standard brushes the background and applied a watercolor texture to it. And then I colored the protagonist on top in the same thing.
Okay.
So I just wanted it to make it feel really different.
Yeah, I wondered why it was that the character looked so different compared to everything else that you had drawn in that environment. So now there's an artistic justification for it.
Yes, I had just reread Scott McCloud's Making Comics, and he talks about the masking effect in there, and I'm like, yes, gonna do that.
Yeah. Honestly, Scott McCloud's Making Comics is an underrated, masterclass book. If you ever want to get into making comics, just read that front to back.
Yep, agreed. All three of his books are great. The first one, Understanding Comics, is great if you want to understand comics and really get it. Making Comics is great for making comics, and then Reinventing Comics is great if you want to be confused for a while. It's a great book. It's just of a very particular time.
Yeah, it is of a very particular time. I tried reading Reinventing Comics, and there were just some things that I'm like, well, this is kind of hit and miss considering what webcomics are.
Yeah, the Webtoons has been kind of reinventing a lot of those things.
It has, yeah. A lot of people, especially pre-Global Panini, anytime that I went to a convention, that's the word, people would ask me, are you on Webtoon? And I'm like, no. I have mixed feelings about Webtoon at the moment, but I'm not going to get into them in this stream.
I researched getting the anthology up on Webtoon at one point. It didn't work for a lot of reasons, such as you can't restrict things to pay, and the fact that you very much need to plan your comics in advance to be Webtoonable. Yeah.
I mean, Clip Studio Paint, the program that I use, does have a format whenever you're opening up a new file for, is this a standard comic page or is this a Webtoon? But Webtoon pages are a very specific format. They read like a scroll.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily print friendly either.
Yes. There was a Webtoon I follow called Space Boy. And I know the creator of that formats things to be both a page and a Webtoon scroll at the same time. He makes it so that it can be dechunked, and not just by making it all squares either. He had a YouTube video on it about that worked great. Oh my god! Can you bring up Ben's last comment on there, because that is
Reinventing Comics is a great alternate universe take on what could have happened with digital comics. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of inspiration there.
Yeah, I need to reread Reinventing. I need to reread not just making comics, but also understanding comics, because understanding comics has some really unique concepts in there that I don't think very many comic artists take advantage of.
Yes, I very much agree. I very much agree.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about the Kickstarter, I really loved Angela's comic because it was just, you don't see anything like that regularly, or at least I don't.
Yeah,
And
I don't either. For folks who have not seen the promotional images yet, Angela is one of the contributors for Less Than Secret. She did a comic that was equal parts comic and equal parts prose.
mm-hmm.
For
Yeah, it was
folks who would like some context.
really interesting. I keep wanting to talk about other people, even though I'm supposed to be talking about myself. But just everyone in this anthology was so cool, y'all.
This is the time to gush. You're one of the organizers.
Yes, it was really hard figuring out who to get into this anthology, I need to say. Me and
Really?
we all talked about it for a while. We couldn't get too many people, and
Mm-hmm.
we wanted everyone to fit together too perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we got a team that was just perfect, in all honesty.
Yeah.
Like, no, we talked a fair bit. There were a lot of options.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Just finished off my tea. Excuse me.
you good?
For folks wondering what tea that was, it was just decaffeinated Earl Grey with some honey added in there.
Nice.
I'm just recovering from a cold, so I just wanted to make sure that I could talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking is good when you're live streaming.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you got so many questions and feedback that you want to give to the other person.
Yes.
But as far as collaborators went, I did notice that and this was actually brought up in our launch party live stream. I thought that pretty much everybody had known each other because y'all went to CCS together.
No, about half of the
but
people.
Half of the contributors did. Yeah.
Yes.
But I was not one of them. Like, I had never been to CCS, but like half of everybody who contributed to this anthology has participated in it.
Yes, it was a useful way to know people.
I get that.
Yeah.
JD, the cover artist, he and I actually went to the same school, which was
nice.
Yeah, so like school, handy way to get to know people when you want to collaborate with them in the future.
It is. It very much is.
Yep.
Yes, but there are, if you can't afford school or anybody watching, there are a lot of ways to go to that. See if your local, when things open up, see if your local comic shop has a comic creator thing. When I first when I first moved to Portland, I went to the comic meetup at Books with Pictures.
Yeah.
Which was just a fantastic way to just meet people, because there's people. So don't feel like you need to go to school, but if you do, it is a very handy network, is honestly one of the best things.
Yeah, there's that, and there's also depending on your local comics community. I know in Columbus they do this a lot. They'll have just nights where when things were open, they would get together at like a comic shop or a bar usually, and they would have like just sketch nights. They would do like Exquisite Corpse games or jam comics, stuff like that. Carlos commented, knew so many SCAD artists, people thought I went to SCAD. For folks who don't know, SCAD stands for Savannah College of Art and Design. I actually have another college buddy of mine who went to their grad program for animation. So, yeah. Drink and Draws.
Yes.
That's another one.
Could you bring to the screen the comic above the SCAD comment?
Favorite characters to draw?
I just felt like answering that.
Okay, yeah.
Which was in Demons of Dover. It was quite interesting because both of the characters were fun, but the human character, I got a good idea of how to draw it. The Dover demon, every time I drew him, I'm like, this is not right. I messed something up here. And then almost magically at the end, it'd be like, oh, hey, it's correct.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
Well, I think you said before you deliberately picked the Dover demon because he was so uncomfortable to look at.
Yes.
So it would make sense that as you drew him, you would be like, I did not get this right.
Yeah, it was actually, its design was largely influenced by, in a roundabout way, the Magnus Archives, where there's an episode about a thing called the Monster Pig.
Oh.
And I don't regularly do fan art, but after that episode, I had to do fan art of the Monster Pig. And
okay, yeah.
I did my first draft of it, and it was just a pig. And I was like, what is this? It's just a pig.
It's not monstery enough.
Yeah. And then it was monstery, but not in the way that scared me. So I went back to the pencils, and I decided to mess with it incrementally to what looked bad to me. What did I not want to be seeing?
Like every time I was monsters.
Every time I made a line, I was like, "Oh no, no! I don't want to see this." Then I would push it even further in that direction, and that pig wound up being one of my favorite pieces of art I've done, actually.
Nice.
And that for the Dover Demon, I gave it this very odd limbs that weren't noodly, but were a bit too thin in a way that I couldn't really figure out how they'd move. There weren't muscles, and I'm like, that makes me uncomfortable. I'm gonna use that.
There you go. So like a pig octopus.
Yes.
Now I'm picturing it in my head, and I can't help but think of like floofs from Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
Yeah. For folks who have never seen a floof, just picture what you imagine a usual UFO to look like. Put googly eyes on it and add 7 billion tentacles on the bottom side of it. That is a floof.
They're great. They're great. For Ben in the comments, one of my favorite D&D moments was in a fairly high-stakes battle. His character accidentally summoned one with wild magic. And that was a very interesting little moment where it's like, tense, what is this? It's here now.
Surprise, floof.
Yep.
And it's funny because I think floofs are characterized as being really, really shy monsters.
Just nice. Nice and shy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love monsters in general. That's my whole thing. I've been considering making them with a Patreon. Bestiary is a project I've been considering for a while, if I want to commit to that soon. Say in the comments if you'd be interested in me making a Bestiary.
Heck yeah. Cast your vote in the comments.
But no, I've been considering it.
Yeah. Everybody in the chat has been talking about like organizing local meetups and ways to reach out for local meetups. I can't say definitively what the Toledo area is like, but that's where I'm at right now because again, everything is shut down. But in the past, I've discovered that if you talk to your local library is generally a good place to turn to if you're like, hey, I'm looking for some like artist groups or local artist groups. For one thing, the librarians there may know like outside groups, but for another thing, they could help you organize a group to get together at the library. And
yes, that is great advice. Also, during COVID, when things are all entirely online, here's a piece of advice I highly suggest: run an anthology. Seriously, we've been having weekly meetups just to make sure the anthology is going smoothly. Number one, it's made the anthology go much more smoothly.
Yes.
Number two, it means that you then have people to talk about with comics every week.
Yes.
It is an extremely useful thing for keeping sane.
Yes, and you don't necessarily have to meet up on Discord to stay in touch, but we do use Discord for our anthology group, and it has been immensely useful to like have everything organized on Discord in separate channels and to be able to like vid chat and voice chat with everybody. Like that's been really, really nice.
Yeah, running a comics anthology has just been fantastic. Anyone following, you don't have to make anything. We went fairly high production value with this, and we're going to get printed and blah, 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 which is all fantastic. But all you really need is access to a library to scan some stuff. or like Affinity Publisher or any free equivalent of that can make a PDF, because you don't need a print book. Just get some of your friends to start being like, hey, here's a page, and put together a 12-page anthology and then put it up on Gumroad or put it up for free somewhere.
Yeah. I do recommend Gumroad. I have used it in the past. I currently use Ko-fi or Coffee. I like to pronounce it coffee because it's Ko-fi. And you can buy people a coffee. It's almost like that's their branding or something. But I do have a little shop on Coffee to like post up PDFs for sale and stuff like that, and it's been really handy in that regard to have that little shop there. So Coffee and Gumroad are really good alternatives if you're looking to publish digital comics. Yeah,
I'll have to check out Coffee. I hadn't really looked at it much yet.
To be fair, Coffee's shop feature is new. It's newer. Yeah, because the Coffee first started out as just a tipping system. It's like an alternative to PayPal. To like, oh, I just found this artist. I really like their work. I'm going to buy them a coffee. Click the button. That's how it started. And it has since expanded to be almost like a Patreon alternative. Which is what I like.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can set up, you can just give once, or you can set up like a monthly subscription. It's entirely up to the user who really likes the artist, what they want to do. There's also a little shop system. You can buy commissions from the artist. So like, yeah, Coffee is like fairly robust as far as having those options available, which is why I switched from Patreon to Coffee. One of the big reasons, because I used to have a Patreon page, but Patreon kept dropping a lot of pledges from my high tier backers. And they have not addressed this since last I looked.
Oof, yeah, that can be an issue. I always think that the key to making a successful art career is diversification. Getting as many different sources.
Yes.
And any resource is a good resource, is what I say.
That's fair. So to that end, what are the resources that you either have or have worked with in the past to make your dream of making comics a reality?
Well, talking to comic shops has been a thing I've always found very useful. A lot of your times, if you live in a big city in particular, a lot of comic shops, if you talk to them, will have a place where they will sell your stuff. Gumroad's fantastic. Most of the times when I sell comics, it's through conventions, which has been a thing lately.
Yeah.
Not great. But conventions are just amazing when they open up. I've heard that there are some digital ones. I have not checked those out, but I think that would be a good place. Once cons open up, they are a great way to find artists. Yeah.
And get physical copies of stuff. That is very true. Yeah.
There is currently no way to buy a physical copy of any of my work other than Less Than Secret.
Pledge on Kickstarter, tinyurl.com/less-than-secret.
Yes. Just because shipping can be really hard to handle. But yeah, that's just a piece of advice I want to give for anyone watching this is you don't need to be scared. These things can actually be really simple. Setting up a Gumroad account takes like 12 seconds.
Yeah.
And there's like no commitment to it. Like it's so easy.
Yeah.
I don't have a Patreon currently, but I set one up before it changed its pricing model.
I was about to ask if you had a Patreon. Yeah.
I don't, but well, technically, but no.
You don't have the page like set up yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's all really easy. It's very easy to do all these things, and I will say, running this Kickstarter has made me want to run another Kickstarter soon. I've been considering.
I mean, it's pretty addictive. I will say, as somebody who has done 11 of my own campaigns and has assisted in this makes the 4th that I've assisted with.
Yeah.
There's a reason why one of my official titles on the Kickstarter page for Less Than Secret is crowdfunding manager.
Yes, you have been very helpful.
Yeah, I do my best.
Yeah.
Ben and I have learned a lot of running our own Kickstarter campaigns about not just the members stuff, but also just keeping costs low, the kinds of things that you want to offer people. I will say, while I have you on here, because we are doing coloring book pages and draw this in your style challenges for Less Than Secret. And you can find out more about that by going to the Kickstarter and checking our updates. That's where coloring book challenges and draw this in your style challenges are posted. For folks who are in the live chat now who are artists and want to stretch their creative muscles, hint hint wink wink, check out the updates on the Kickstarter page. But going back to rewards, because I was talking with somebody over at Neverending who also has a Kickstarter right now, and we were talking about cryptids, and he brought up, hey, what about stickers? So we could have stickers as an unlockable prize for a Draw This in Your Style or coloring book page challenge. Just throwing that out there. Think about it.
It is quite an interesting thing. Not too hard either. I've made stickers before.
Yeah. Okay. Question about stickers, because I've seen some creators have their own Cricut machine, and then still others go to an outside printer. So have you done stickers before? And if you have, what's your preferred method?
I have done stickers before. I did not use much of a machine. I got sticker paper and then I cut them out with scissors.
That's a method.
It worked very well, in all honesty. It worked very well.
Yeah. I did that when I first started. Did I just see a cryptid tap you on the shoulder?
Oh, I think you saw my cat's tail.
Oh, we saw Tuna.
Yes. Yeah, she just left my lap.
Okay.
He was on there the whole time.
I saw movement and I was like, oh, cryptid spotting.
Yes.
Yeah. I used to do that method of stickers. I would print them and then cut them, but the sticker paper that I was using was not super great. So I switched to using an outside printer instead.
That's probably a good call.
Yeah. Oh, Ben just said the Portland apartment crawler.
Tuna would make, if we were to do the next Kickstarter as cryptid themes, which I'll just say that's not the current plan.
But it could be a plan.
But if we did, Tuna would be a good one.
Yeah.
Maybe Tuna, he can contribute, make a comic.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you kind of need thumbs, but you could also just do the Animal Wonders Montana thing and just put paint on his little paws and have him dig for treats on canvases.
Yes.
Yep. Because that's what Animal Wonders Montana does on their YouTube channel. Whenever they want to have the animals make art, is they put globs of paint across the floor so that the animals walk across the paint globs, and then they walk across the canvases. And they'll hide treats either under the canvases or on top of the canvases. And the animals will interact with the treats, and that causes particular patterns with the paint on the canvas.
That's clever.
It is very clever.
Yeah. I have seen some artists without thumbs, actually. There was one brilliant painter who didn't have any hands, who just painted with his mouth and got fantastically realistic. So, you never know.
Well, yeah, well, once you reach a certain particular level of dexterity, you could do anything.
Yeah, this is true.
Oh, they're catching up on comments. The comment section is talking about online conventions a little bit. Carlos says online cons might be better run by smaller groups than huge cons. I could see that.
Agreed. Yeah. It's easy to get lost in the shuffle when an online thing gets too big.
Yes. Yeah. It's also kind of easy to get lost in the shuffle at huge in-person cons.
Yep. It's but like I've found I used to be very into Instagram. I don't use it as much anymore because of some of their algorithm stuff. But I found that a lot of the time, smaller hashtags that were very specific often got you more engagement because you were there for very specific things.
Yep.
Like, that was why part of the reason we decided to make this comic about cryptids is it's such a very specific thing. Like, the first anthology I was involved in was the one for CCS, which was called Lighter. And Lighter was a great anthology. If you ever see it at com, buy it.
Yeah.
It's not available online. But
okay.
But no one goes out in search of Lighter. So I think small themed conventions would be actually a very awesome thing.
Yeah. Well, small themed conventions, I got to build the bridge, the mental bridge. Small themed conventions, Mothman convention, Mothman.
Yes.
Because there is a Mothman convention, or at least a Mothman festival. Takes place in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, because that's where Mothman has been sighted. And for folks who don't know, I did a short story about the Mothman for Less Than Secret.
It's very good.
Yeah, I chose Mothman as my subject because I lived for the longest time along the Ohio-West Virginia border. So like everybody that I knew would talk about the Mothman. And so I was very familiar with the lore.
Love Mothman.
Yeah, well, Mothman's fun. He's also he's probably the most well-known cryptid outside of Bigfoot. And probably that's because of a terrible, terrible 2000s movie called The Mothman Prophecies. Loved it as a teenager. I look back on it and I'm like, what did I see in that movie? Because yeah. I mean, but it's teenager tastes. So I know that people like to poop on teenagers, but at the same time, I will poop on my old teenage self sometimes just to be like, why?
It's okay to poop on individual teenagers.
Yes. But yeah, I was very familiar with the Mothman lore. I also have a friend of mine who makes comics as well, who runs a art shop down in Wheeling, West Virginia, and she did a series of mini comics called Son of the Mothman, which is about the son of the Mothman. And he's just, hanging out in backwoods West Virginia, like drinking with his cryptid buddies.
That's fantastic.
It's pretty great. So like there is like Mothman's hugely popular along the Ohio-West Virginia border, even outside of Point Pleasant, which was where he was originally spotted. So I would not be surprised if there was a convention for the Dover Demon in Massachusetts.
Oh, that'd be interesting. That would be interesting. Yeah. Huh. I'll have to look into that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you were in like in Northeast America because CCS is based in Vermont.
Yes, I did spend most of my life in Vermont and New York.
Okay.
So
what prompted
I've
the
been
move to
in
Portland?
Wait, sorry, what did you say?
What prompted the move to Portland?
To be honest, I wasn't sure where to go, and Portland was a place with a comic scene. And I wanted to leave because White River Junction is a fantastic town that has a lot of people moving in and out of it. So it's a very good place to go for a couple of years, in my opinion. If you have a life there, it's very good, but I didn't really have much of going on outside of CCS, so I was like, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Portland, sure.
Yeah. I feel like Bowling Green has that same kind of vibe. Like, yeah, there are people who like live there permanently, but for the most part, people who go to Bowling Green are only there for like 4 or 5 years, and then they're gone.
Yeah. There's some great people in White River Junction who stay there full time. Like, it's not just CCS. There's actually some really cool stuff going there. Other than that, I just wasn't involved with it.
Yeah. So mostly you were just sticking with the Center for Cartoon Study stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, it's fair.
Yes.
Ben just commented, Vermont is great, but it tends to become a bit of an echo chamber. I feel that.
Yeah.
A lot of pockets along the Ohio-West Virginia border are a lot like that too, where it's like, yeah, I mean, there's pockets where it's neat, but they're very insular.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ben made a comment a little while ago about Reddit has a similar thing with smaller specific subreddits.
Mm-hmm.
And just because I talked about creator advice earlier, I feel like saying another thing.
Okay.
Which is that I often find the internet is so big. Trying to be everything to everybody just doesn't work. Really, the best thing to do is just find your niche and what makes your comics and your creative voice weird, and just go for it.
Yep.
Did I make a comic entirely about auto-cannibalism? Yes. Are 99% of people not going to want to read that? Yes. But there's always 1%, and you never know.
Yeah.
That was actually also...
Yeah.
Okay, there's arguments on whether that's a horror comic or not, but I'm going to say not. It was more just creepy. It didn't have the structure.
Yeah. I'll also say this. This is actually advice that comes from Making Comics by Scott McCloud, which is make the thing that you are interested in. Do not chase the thing that you think will make you money.
Yes.
And I say this because I know that there are some creators who look at the surge of, say, LGBTQ plus comics, and they'll think, oh, I need to have an LGBTQ plus protagonist and then I'll make money. Don't do that. Speaking as somebody who has been involved in LGBTQ comics since 2013, just if you're going to do that, do your research, but at the same time, unless you feel really passionate about that sort of thing, maybe just make your own stuff.
That is the main thing I've learned, and also why I was so excited to run a Cryptid Anthology.
Yes.
Is readers can tell when something is a big part of you and your life, and I love creepy shit. Maybe I shouldn't be swearing on this stream. Anyway.
Oh, you can swear, it's fine. We're adults.
All right. I love creepy shit, and that was a big part of why this project was so fun to me, is because have I made far too many comics about vampires? Yes. But I love vampires, and I will
keep
even
making
regretfully say I love Twilight.
Oh, and what? Hold on. We just had a bombshell drop. Say that again.
I love Twilight except for all the parts that are racist.
Okay. Wow. You heard it here, folks. I need to let this sink in for a hot second.
Oh, yes. No, I am.
Okay.
Except for the racism, I am unabashedly a fan of Twilight.
Okay. Yeah.
That is a big accept. I don't reread it anymore. In middle school, before I knew what I was talking about, I was a big fan of it.
I can see that, yeah.
And I reread it, and I loved all the parts that were uncomfortable.
Yeah. And then basically...
I'm also running this den.
Raider, you're fired.
You can't fire me if I quit. No.
What does this chap become?
Well, I was entirely Team Jacob, I just need to say.
Yeah.
Because he was better. Actually, I had a very specific plan on Twilight, entirely off subject, but I need to say this because this was what I was planned.
Go for it.
Kid.
Yeah.
If I had been Bella, I would have basically shoved my hand into Edward's mouth to become a vampire and then run away with Jacob. Jacob would get over me being a vampire eventually.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, immortality's rad. I don't buy immortality sucks. No, just be a vampire. They didn't even need to kill people in that world. So be a vampire and then hang with werewolves. It'd be rad.
Yeah.
I was Team Bella.
I mean, yeah. But, back to the original topic, there is a niche for people who really like vampires.
Yes.
I like to say that my niche is fantasy and fantasy-related stuff, which is why my story trends more in the magical realism department for Less Than Secret.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, which, honestly, I'm one of those creators that, like, if I have an idea, I'll just make it, and then I'll figure out what genre it fits afterwards.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, like,
No,
I'm that kind of creator.
That was honestly what I loved so much about Less Than Secret, is that we found the niche of cryptids, which is a niche that everyone brought it in their own way. None of these stories are similar, but they all have the same thing, which will appeal to a core audience that I also do love. Like, Ben keeps being mentioned because he's in the chat and he's the other person running this. Ben made a Western.
Yeah. Ben made a Western.
In his D&D world, in the Cryptid Anthology.
Yeah, like Ben made a D&D-ish Western story. You did a horror. I did magical realism. Jessie, who I will be interviewing in a later live stream. Stay tuned for announcements for that. But she did basically slice of life story. So, like, everybody did something different. There's comedy, there's slice of life, there's magical realism, horror, Westerns, a murder mystery.
Yes.
There's a murder mystery in this anthology. The one uniting thing that unites all of these stories is that they are all about cryptids.
Yep. Yeah, it's been really fun.
It has been really fun. I will say, like I said before, this has been one of the more fun collaborations that I've done for a long while. Also, one of the best organized.
Thank you. Yes. It was amazingly good. That was when I said we want to make people that worked as a team, we got everyone to take just their part, and it worked great.
Ben just made a comment. One of the best things about anthologies is that creators do some of their best work when given light creative restrictions. Pushing against those rules leads to some great content. Agreed. That is very true. Like, that's something that I don't think many people understand about creativity, is that there's a fine line regarding what kind of restrictions you should place on your creative process. Because, like, if you're just given free reign to do whatever you want, you're going to be frozen, because you have choice overload, which is a very real thing. But if you give yourself constraints, like, I can only make this many pages, it has to be in black and white, and it has to be about a cryptid. Like, those were the constraints that were given to each of the creators, and it worked.
It really did.
Yeah.
It really did.
As Carlos says, guidelines draw focused direction.
Very true.
Yeah.
Well worded.
It's a bit like bowling. Yeah.
It is.
Because, like, there's a lane. If you have the guardrails, which, you know, there are some people who are like, hey, guardrails are cheating. But, like, no, those are guidelines.
Yeah.
Yeah. How else are you going to hit more strikes unless you have the guardrails up?
Yep.
Yeah. It's a lot the same thing for the creative process.
Yep. Also, bowling is better the worse the people are at it. But that's...
Like... Bowling is one of those activities that, like, when you say it out loud, it sounds like the most boring thing imaginable. But when you actually do it, it's the most fun thing that you can do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sitting in a room for 24 hours a day doing little marks to people standing around on a page sounds similar, but it is so much fun.
I mean, there's a reason why there were events for, like, 24-hour comic day to happen in person.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Which, if things safely open back up again, it would be great if those of us here with Less Than Secret managed to get together in person sometime to have a 24-hour comic day. Because the 24-hour comic day that I participated in, we played movies as background noise while we worked. That's fun. I have a couple of very good movies that would be very good picks, because the movies that I watched, the 24-hour comic day was how I first discovered them. And I want to share that discovery. Also, speaking of cryptids.
Oh, hello.
This is Bree Bree.
Hi, kitty.
Yeah. You would not believe this. She's 15 years old.
Oh, what a sweetheart.
Yeah, or at least she will be 15 next month. Aw. She loves being in my lap. She's also one of the smallest 15-year-old cats I've come across. There's only one other cat that was smaller than her who was 18 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, she was the host at a Airbnb that I stayed at. Her name was Splash. The cat tax has been paid. Yes, absolutely, Ben. So also Bree, another real cryptid for the Cryptid Anthology.
Yes.
Yeah, she loves being in my lap. She's such a lap baby. She's very sweet. But I wanted to highlight her just in case somebody saw the tail and was like, "What's going on?" It's Bree. All right. I'm looking at the time. It is a few minutes past two, or at least past two my time, because we're both in different time zones. So is there anything that you would like to say before we wrap this up?
Follow me on Twitter and back the anthology.
Yes. You can follow Rainer on Twitter at RF Cannon. I had the banner ready. Yes. Preparedness. So yeah, follow Ben on Twitter. He's got a very fun Twitter account. Just throwing that out there. And you'll get your website figured out, I'm sure. And once you get that figured out, you'll announce it on Twitter.
Yep.
But be sure to back our campaign. tinyurl.com/less-than-secret. We still have early bird specials available, but they expire Saturday. So if you want an early bird special reward, back the campaign as soon as you can.
Also, the numbers prove a lot of you do. Like, oh my god, how is that like one of the most popular bundles? It's a good deal.
Wait, what's the most popular bundle?
Or we've just been getting a lot of early bird specials. It's been very cool.
Yeah. Well, they're early bird specials. There's something to be said about something that's relatively rare.
Yes.
Yep. It sounds like you're being called off screen.
Oh, sorry about that. No, that was me not muting my phone. And that was TikTok. I'm going to mute that. But either way.
That's fine. That's fine. So yes, check out the campaign, Less Than Secret, a cryptid anthology, tinyurl.com/less-than-secret. There's a longer link in the YouTube description down below. Ben just said we are one early bird special edition away from $3,000. We are so close, y'all. If you can help us get to 3,000 in funding, we will unlock the next stretch goal.
Very, very cool.
Yes. All right. Well, that's going to be it from the both of us. Check out the campaign. Follow Rainer. Follow Rainer on Twitter, RF Cannon. You can find me online at linktree/KelseyD. I also have a link to that down in the YouTube description. Tune in Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern Dated Time. Here on this channel, I will be talking with Ben, who is one of the other co-organizers for the anthology.
Woo-woo.
Yeah. All right. And thank you, Carlos. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this live stream. Check out the campaign. Thank you so much for watching. Do you have a sign-off?
See ya! Good afternoon, good evening, good night. Don't sue me.
Well, I'll go ahead and say my sign-off. Thank you all so much for watching. You are awesome.